my queen,
Your queen.
my princess.
Hey, sure.
What's up,
I'm not a
guys?
princess.
Welcome to the Love and Thunder Welcome to the podcast. Rip.
That's how I speak English, like 25% of the time.
My name's Dave Lipson,
And I'm Camille Leblanc-bazinet.
and we just had sex.
If only it was true.
Don't tell my wife. Here we go. It's going to be a great podcast today. We wanted to get into some cool subjects today and something that a lot of people have reached out to us for. Obviously, folks can ask us about anything and everything,
Yes.
but one question in particular that we get, probably because of the journey that we've taken and the one that we like to take our athletes through, is how to blend, how to cross-pollinate bodybuilding
And CrossFit.
with CrossFit.
Yeah.
And we're doing some really fun things in that realm. First off, we got a couple thousand athletes right now doing it online with our programs. We also have written a bunch of books, but more recently, you and I have started prepping athletes from our local CrossFit gym
Yeah.
and a few online
To
for
do
their
the-
first bodybuilding show.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. I think that we're kind of at this point that a lot of people have been doing CrossFit for over 10 years, and they kind of realize that this chasing performance does come with the cost, and it's really fun. I've done it at the highest level, but there's kind of this part that is like, okay, well, you know, what else is out there? And personally, because I've got so sick when I was pregnant, and we can get into that if we want to, but I've got extremely sick and I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do the pushing. It would give me anxiety and panic attack, and it just didn't feel supportive in my life at this point. And I really wanted to get something that would elevate how I felt in this time of my life. And now I feel like for longevity, I really love blending both worlds. There's good in both worlds. You don't have to be only on the left or only on the right. The right balance is there, right in the middle.
There can be no good without evil. There can be no light without darkness. If
Oh,
you guys,
yes.
there can be no outfit like this. By
Without
the way,
an outfit.
I didn't mention this. Obviously, this is a pretty badass getup. I got on jean shorts, cut off jean jacket, and my American flag bandana, all in honor of my good friend Bartley Weaver, who this week is going to compete in the Nathan's Hot Dog World Hot Dog Eating Contest. So Bartley, he's a stud dude, pro bodybuilder, professional competitive eater, actually competed against our buddy Matt Chan on
At the Titan game, yeah.
Yeah, how small a world is that?
That's so
and
funny.
when he competes, he's the most muscular guy on that stage eating those hot dogs by a long shot, but he always competes in the American flag bandana, so he gave me this one, and I want to wish him the best and support. But I think, listen, the first place to maybe start this conversation is why? Why? Like, why would you blend bodybuilding with CrossFit? What's the purpose of it? I think our stories and journeys are probably going to parallel a lot of athletes that are listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah. Do you want to start with you?
Yeah, sure.
Why did you, want it, like going back, way back to when, like, you started fitness?
Well, let me start by saying I love CrossFit. I think
Me
it's
too.
the coolest.
Yes,
it's fun.
it's really fun.
I mean, it really changed the game for me coming from a traditional strength and conditioning background to be able to feel like competitive and train with a purpose and have something to chase. But after a while, and I had a long career competing and especially coaching
Yeah.
level 1 and level 2
Yeah.
seminars and specialty courses for over a decade. I love it. And I think that's really the reason what pushed me into bodybuilding is the fact that I do really like these fun, athletic, functional movements
Yeah.
that are so fun to do. I love training in a gym, in a community, and I love the intensity.
Yes.
I was having a cool conversation.
I think both, right? When it comes to training, I know for me and you, it's so important, both the intensity and the community.
Yeah.
It's like earning your body, earning your result. Like, there's something very like noble and like uplifting.
Well, I was telling my buddy John Wellborn, who I just did a podcast with him on the Power Athlete podcast. He owns the Power Athlete, used to do CrossFit football seminars. He'd been around CrossFit forever. And I was just telling him, I'm like, it just got to the point where I love this stuff so much. And in particular, what I love and what I need is the ability to just unload on like a barbell or a set of dumbbells.
Yes.
Like to be able to once a day get out of the office, off the desk, into a gym, like you're going into a cage match, and being able to hit, that one set with malicious intent to exercise the demons. That release and the ability to express that aggression makes me feel like a man, makes me feel alive. I don't want to lose it. But the problem was with CrossFit, like I was just beating myself into the ground where that was getting taken away from me. Because I just, like after that honeymoon period, I think people, when they start doing CrossFit, it's like a honeymoon period because you've never done these movements before. You've probably never worked.
It's very empowering
You've never worked with that kind of intensity before. And so like
or weight.
The results and the progress comes fast and hard, and like every day is a PR. And then, after maybe 2, maybe 3 years where you actually have enough capacity now to hurt yourself, right? Because like when you start with an empty barbell, like, you're not going to hurt yourself with the empty barbell, right? Even if you lift it terribly, but when you now have the capacity and you know how to move and you're like pushing it, those margins for error become slimmer. And the process of actually recovering and remodeling and healing the tissue, it's not really part of the program. No. Like every day is pedal to the metal, and it's because it's constantly varied, like there isn't enough modulation to actually facilitate real recovery if you're doing real damage. I started to plateau first, meaning like, hey, I'm not getting any better. And then there was actually even a decline because I was trying to keep up with you and the other athletes. And, I'm 40, almost 41 right now. Cami, you're like 6 years younger than me. And a lot of the people you train with were younger than Cam. So,
and let's be honest, I was a little psychotic.
And you're psychotic, and these are all athletes that are ultra competitive, very gifted, and and I consider myself a competitive athlete.
You're like full disclosure, because I've known you for so long at this point, and if you would have like just wanted to get like a little bit better at the gymnastic, you would have been phenomenal.
Oh yeah, I would have been good. I would have loved it.
We would do things. Okay, so we would do things. Me and Dave, where like Dave would literally not like. He wasn't a fan of running. He would not run at all year. Do the lifting because he liked this, and then he would like jump with me right before the CrossFit game, which is like where
into
I'm at.
Conditioning workouts.
He would jump into the running workout more specifically when I'm at my like peak condition, and he would crush me on the run. It was so impressive. You were so strong and big, and it was very impressive.
What's all this used to be strong and big talk?
You're bigger now, but I'm saying
you got to give it so much context.
You were so athletic, and it was earned. Like, let's be honest, like. It wasn't just like
one way or another. It wasn't God-given.
It was earned, but like with your baseball career, and then you did track and field in high school. So, and then you got hurt doing baseball. So that's when you got into the strength and conditioning.
Yeah,
you made your body super strong. So then when you came into the CrossFit world, you had this like super weird combo of experience, and literally all you had to do was like to get the gymnastic a little. And I believe so deeply.
You wanted me to do it so bad. It was more than that, though.
I wanted
it was more
you
than
to
that
be
because
happy.
like to be a competitive at that
I thought
world class
you could
level.
win. I thought if you put the like a little bit.
I really appreciate that sentiment. I guess we'll never know. But
it doesn't matter.
I'll tell you how I felt though.
Because I wanted it.
For those of you guys who know me and know me and my life and my journey, like when I had my baseball career, like that was my time to be a professional athlete, and I poured all of myself into that, and I loved it, and I did it for a long time. And when I was done with not just the sport, but that kind of mentality of like, I didn't want that kind of imbalance. And I left baseball because I wanted balance in my life. I was just traveling around year round playing ball, never had a home, never had roots. And the reason why I was ready to leave is that I just need more balance. I want to have a family or just more, start to establish some foundational groundwork for after baseball, So
Yeah. It is something that I think.
when CrossFit came around, it is and always has been and always will be to me a very fun hobby.
100%.
Yeah, and we like, and it's a hobby that enriches our lives so much because, one, it was our careers, me as a trainer, you also as a trainer and an athlete. It was our social circles, all of our friends, most of our conversations. It all came from CrossFit, which was a good and also a slightly toxic thing in retrospect. You never want to have all your eggs in one basket. But when it got to the point where all of a sudden, like, I'm not getting that feeling out of the program like I'm really excited to do this anymore. Like I'm not seeing more PRs. I kind of feel bad about myself
Also
because
constantly being scared of getting hurt.
yeah, I'm like not as strong as I used to be and things are going downhill. My body's breaking down and my back is killing me and I get this, just
Your
weird
hormones,
reoccurring stuff. And the hormonal suppression too, because like, again, I was trying to keep up with you.
So much like cortisol
Yep,
and just
not
that
enough recovery.
inflammation. And
I'm the type of person that gets really excessive really quickly.
Yeah.
And you know this because you've been skiing with me before, where I just like put my arms out to the side and go straight down the double black diamond without turning. Like that's how I train. And granted, that's irresponsible training practices, metaphorically at least. But I needed those bumper lanes in there to keep me safe that I wasn't getting from CrossFit. So after the back surgery, and like I had big time back problems. I'm sure a lot of you guys out there and girls have had back problems from just torn up discs and the chronic back pain, degenerative disc issues that come along with that.
Tweaking your back is just it's just the worst.
There's a reason why they use that term back breaking.
Yeah, it is back breaking and it's scary. And every time you do it, you're like,
you know what it did to me? The worst thing it did to me was it just took the wind out of my sails.
Oh, I remember that.
It just completely deflated me because I had so much fun and I loved just being intense and lifting heavy and going gnarly on a CrossFit workout. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess there's nothing left for me now.
And that was kind of the start for you with the bodybuilding. It was like...
Oh, I remember the moment.
It was like it was kind of this thing, and I mean, we would have conversation, and I remember for me seeing you, it would be like you just have to do something with your life because you were getting depressed.
Really
and
depressed.
It was very sad.
I see that all the time
hard.
with people with back injuries, where you can see how heartbreaking it is because a lot of the folks, they like it's not just exercise. Like they take such joy in movement. A lot of them are like former athletes. Like they've done this their whole life. It's such an integral, foundational part of, the fabric of their identity. And now it's getting taken away. It's heartbreaking. And so I remember after surgery, I was on the couch for a long time looking up at the ceiling with plenty of time to think about stuff. And I was like, well, now that I've kind of been given this new lease on life, at least athletically, fixed my back up good enough to go back and train, hopefully. How am I going to honor that?
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to keep doing this stuff. And I was thinking maybe I'll do, powerlifting. And I'm like, yeah, no,
maybe
that's probably just
idea.
another kind of slippery slope for me.
But I think what's also the hard thing, like looking at especially your personality and my personality, is like we need a challenge.
Yep.
Like we do need things to be hard, and we need something that makes us feel, because there's so much in life that you can't control. But if I can give myself one big win a day, and I can control the training, then I know I'm moving forward. And it's very gratifying. And often it like kind of get that wheel moving again if I'm like been like stuck in a rut or something like that. It's like my anchor.
I know for you and for me, right? If we have a goal that we really want and we have a path that we know can get us there, we will do whatever it takes to get down that path. Like we will make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And so, as I was going through these things in my head, thinking like, don't you powerlifting, maybe Olympic lifting? You were starting to lift for like Team USA at the time, so I was getting like really jealous. I'm like, maybe I could just magically develop an insane amount of flexibility and just slam through these positions. No, that's not a good idea. I realized I'm like, hey, the first time that I ever picked up a weight was in my high school weight room. And it was like a traditional weight room with like a set of old dumbbells in front of the mirrors. And I remember when I was 14 years old, as a freshman in high school, our PE class went into the gym to learn how to lift a little bit. And I grabbed the dumbbells and I started doing curls. And I'm like, I want to do curls so I can have big arms and get chicks and look like a superhero. And that was, you know, that idea of having imposing physicality to me was so appealing, you know, because like I grew up, my heroes were like all the best action heroes of the 80s and 90s. Like,
So going back just real quick to the bicep curl and getting the curl, how did that go for
I
you?
had to work on it for a really long time. Eventually it paid out, but it did take a while. There were a lot of other residual issues, crooked teeth, fucked up face. It didn't help me. But yeah, so my heroes were all like the American Gladiators, like Dan Nitro Clark.
I grew up watching the
these
American
guys,
Gladiator too.
And I'm like, I want to be like these guys. And then when I got into baseball, you were mentioning like my injury I had, that drove me into training, thinking like, oh, if I'm gonna fix my, you know, if my arm is my weak link, I got to make the rest of me as strong as I can. That was the first time that I realized that when it comes to sports, like physicality wins. You know, because spending that time just turning myself into a bigger, more powerful athlete, that leveled me up in the professional baseball organization. I was, you know, and there's a reason why the guys in the big leagues all look like Adonises, and it's whether, you know, they're just naturally gifted or the nature of their training develops that, or maybe they're able to meet that really high training demand because they look that way. It doesn't matter. There's a connection between form and function. And so I wanted to explore that and start to like do bodybuilding for real. Not like when people are like, oh, I did a thruster and a burpee, so I'm doing CrossFit. 'Cause that's what a lot of people do with bodybuilding.
Yes.
They're like,
Or
oh,
they do it.
I used to do bodybuilding 3 sets of 10 and bicep curls and this and that. I'm like, that's not bodybuilding.
They'll do a HIIT workout and then call it CrossFit.
Bodybuilding is very intense. And it's intense in a different way than maybe like people are used to in CrossFit, like going as fast as you can or, you know, as heavy as possible. But it's intense in that like you are going to really every day challenge yourself to failure with movements in a probably much more controlled fashion, but you get to flip that malicious switch in your head. And to me, that like as a bodybuilder, that helped me so much because most people don't train hard.
Yeah.
And as CrossFitters, like you have so many valuable skills that you might not even realize. Like the fact that when you compare a CrossFitter to a regular person in the gym, like CrossFitters know how to move through some of the basic movements.
Yes,
Like,
they generally, I would say the average moves like way better than most people in the fitness world.
I'm going to say the squats at CrossFit West Chase down the street are way better than the squats at 24 Hour or at Crunch Fitness on Park, right? Yeah. Like you see some horrific stuff, and most people don't even attempt them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because they'll classify it as like, you know, in their head dangerous,
but those
which
movements,
is not.
those movements are golden.
Yes.
Because they lasted the test of time. 2, we know that they have like a lot of context and utility and application outside the gym.
Yes.
So if you're looking to like still have that ability to, and some people call it like, I don't want to just be a display model only. It's a great way to like preserve your athleticism and capacity just to move well, just by practicing them. And they're wildly effective in terms of training effect. Like they recruit a lot of muscle. So they're like very high utility, high value movements. And even like the golden age bodybuilders who in my mind, I always look to as like, you know, the 1970s and 80s bodybuilders that they looked athletic, but they were just like very well muscled.
They were athletic.
They were super athletic. Those guys were also like the most athletic guys. They were doing those barbell movements. They were doing chins and deadlifts and back squats and overhead presses. And all that stuff.
The amount of video of like Arnold doing deadlift and stuff like that.
Arnold started as a power lifter and an Olympic lifter. Yeah.
It's I don't know. I feel like that's a good point you're bringing. It's like when did bodybuilding became in people's mind this like 5x10 kind of easy and like bad programming
I think
thing?
that
it's
kind
like,
of came mostly from
here?
Like, you know, magazines is where I usually found that stuff. Like when I was growing up, Muscle and Fitness magazine, you know, Men's Health. Like, you know, you have a bodybuilder and they'd be like, hey, what's your routine? And they'll kind of go through it. But most of it was like on machines, right? And unless you had that foundation of muscle and knowledge of movement, like, yeah, that's going to be easy for anyone to jump on a pec deck machine and rip out 15 reps.
Yeah, you're right. The magazine and stuff, they just made it more like this is accessible instead of
Yeah, and
showing
athletes
like.
stopped training that athletic way. And like even the look of those bodybuilders, like the look of those guys in the golden age, like they were actually, to me, they looked like denser athletes. Like they had bigger cores, you know, because they
Well, they
were.
also had like. They also had like mature musculature.
Yes. Yep.
Like deep musculature that and I like a lot of CrossFitter have like that in their back, and you can see they have like deep
You see
back
the layers.
musculature because they've done so many like hypo and things like that, which is gorgeous. But yeah, like I feel like there's a difference there. It's like the kind of the thickness and the depth. You can see like the maturity and the level of training of like how people train in their body.
It's there. Sure. It's there for days. Like it's just a thick person, you know.
Yes.
And I think like when I was considering this, I just wanted to take the approach of like I feel like I have a really good grasp of CrossFit, teaching it, having done it for a while, and also like a decent amount of credibility there, having taught for so long. But in the realm of bodybuilding, nobody knows me, and I've done nothing. So if I want to really do this, I should do it for real.
Yeah.
Like I should, that was one of the first things I did was like, I signed up for a show. I had no idea exactly how I was going to prep myself.
Yeah.
I had no idea how I was going to diet. I had no idea how I was going to train. I had no idea about how to pose or even the semantics of the sport of bodybuilding. But I was like, I'll figure it out. And lucky enough, like I was able to link up with some super high level bodybuilding coaches and athletes, as well as some people in the academic realm that were experts on muscle hypertrophy, like one of our friends, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that I really like about us is that we just want to learn from the best.
Yeah.
Like that's really, and I think we were both at a point in our life that it was like, I'm coming back from, for you was your back injuries, and for me it was, the pregnancy and the NICU with Zoe.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that.
It just been so much on me that it was like, I just needed to find something that was going to be supportive and like very purposeful in order to regain my strength and like rebuild my body. And the thing
you need to give people some context as to like where you were at towards the end of your competitive CrossFit career, physically and mentally and emotionally, like where it left you as your starting point.
I would say drained.
Yeah.
Like drained in every way possible. Was it 19 was my, I think 19 was my last, 2019 was my last year, and I went team. I didn't want to compete at first. And then Alec, Jessica, and Cody asked me to be on their team. I was like, why not?
But I remember 2017, that's when you hurt your arm, right? So like you tore your arm, another CrossFit injury, but that had, prepping for the games is brutal. So I think that's different than just your regular average injury. But
prepping to try to go back to the game.
That next year, though, became all about like, I'm going to go back, I'm going to get back. And then you got back,
took everything.
Which is so hard to do because when you have a surgery, that sets you back 4 months. And by the way, everyone else is training. And by the time you get back to your baseline, they've had a half a year to improve themselves. And you're like, just getting back to kind of feeling normal. So, just to qualify, and I think, did Brooke Wells do that too?
Yeah, she did.
I mean, you have a really strong connection with Brooke, and that's not an easy thing to do.
I know, and a lot of athletes do it. And but for example, the year that I came back from my shoulder surgery, we were at regional, and so because when I was rehabbing my shoulder, I like didn't think that like when you're in the sling, your wrist is also not moving.
Yep.
So I never thought that like, oh, maybe I should move my wrist, I was so focused on my shoulder.
Well, I think you're also like just trying to be still so you don't piss it off while it's healing.
Well, no, because I was doing the shoulder rehab, but I never did rehab for my wrist, and you don't think that your wrist isn't moving.
And then I remember you had a bunch of cysts.
I had like cysts all over my wrist, and it hurted
Yeah.
so bad. And my
You had a video of the doctor like draining a few of them.
yes,
It was pretty
yes.
gnarly. Yep.
And like my literally my wrist was like double size the other one. And
Yep.
if you look at
Didn't look
regional,
right.
I have this like wrist support the whole time.
We got you those tiger gymnastics things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was so
Tiger paw.
Yes, and my wrist was so bad it couldn't flex back at all.
That was really hard in like the front rack position with like a front squat.
Well,
or
the
something.
handstand walk
Yeah.
and the snatch and all of it. So I did the whole regional with my wrist like just it was hurting so much.
You are so stubborn.
It was man, like I remember that I would be getting nauseous in the workout, not because of the workout, because my wrist was hurting
explode.
so much. And then we would literally spend every in between workout and every night just trying to keep the inflammation down because it was so bad.
But you came back and you had like a very like rewarding games because they repeated a workout that you did really bad in the first time and
Yes.
you did really great in it the second
Yeah.
time. That like, was it a full marathon or a half marathon
Well, so
row?
the first time we did the half marathon row.
Okay.
And that was like the first time that I kind of gave
one
up
was
on myself.
and they did a marathon row, which
then
is like doubly as bad.
And then we did a marathon row.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that's one
Plenty
of
of rowing.
So that's one of the thing about I think my career was in 2013. That's when we did the half marathon row, and I gave up on myself. I 100% did. I have no shame, no nothing.
You're just
People
on the
do
rower
it.
feeling bad for yourself while everyone else watched you.
Like what?
It's so sad I have to be here. You know, on the world stage as one of the best CrossFitters amongst all my friends, even though I desperately do want to be here.
I literally, that was it, right? I felt bad for myself. I was like, oh, they did this to me, but I was also so young.
It's a real wife line, like, you did this to me.
Yeah, I
like
was young, right? And you learn and you get better. And I just remember when that workout was over, I wasn't sad about the workout. It was like, I don't know, the biggest slap in my face that I just did that. And
well,
I
think
hate
like I was concerned because you were like displaying a lot of like you were kind of injured or hurt or exhausted, and I think that a lot of that pain you were experiencing after that
was my heart.
It was psychological. It was the psychological pain of, because when you perform good, you're like, oh, let's go, ice bath, and you were just like, you coming off the field like an injured athlete.
I really was devastated because it was huge though. On the flip side, it was huge. It was kind of this realization that I was so far from being who I wanted to be. And like that version, it was like
that was a gut check because but earlier that year, you did an exhibition against Sam, or you had like an open exhibition thing.
I was getting there.
And you were dominating, and I think you went into those CrossFit Games thinking like, I'm going to be a world champion this year. And then they threw that at you, and it's like, that might not be the case.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think every year you're hoping to be the champ.
But you had a lot of hype. Like you had a lot of coverage. You were moving up.
I knew I was getting there.
Yeah.
I knew I was getting there. Let's say it like that. But yes, after that event, I was devastated because the veil of like thinking I was a certain way was lifted.
Yeah.
And it was, I just met, because we have so many sides of us, and it's like I really like met this side of me, and I was like, never again.
Yeah, I think that.
And then it like followed me through all those years, because then I win the CrossFit game, and that was still like this thing that like, it was kind of still there. And then when I came back from my shoulder surgery, that was the workout they gave us, and everyone was like, no. And I was like, oh my God, I was so stoked. Like you so rarely get a second chance. And I knew I wasn't going to win.
Yep.
It was so far from this thing that.
But isn't it funny, because even just like a slightly different mental approach was like a night and day difference, right? Just like even physically, like you're probably not that physically different than that person who rode that thing in 2013, but the way you perceived it was completely different.
Yeah, but that's what life is supposed to be, right?
Yep.
You're supposed to face challenge and you're supposed to take it and grow and then forgive yourself for who you were with
Yep.
the tools you had back then. So when you get this new challenge, that was the same one. It's like, well, are you the same person or have you grown? And so when they announced it, I was so excited to have the opportunity to show myself that I can have an open heart and a clear mind with whatever is thrown at me and just give it my best.
Yeah, I think
and all of my career, that is what I've wanted.
that's not easy to do, because I think like some people don't have that kind of humility, right? Maybe they have more entitlement, and you can teach it to yourself or life can teach it to you. But
Well,
like
that was kind of what it
people
was,
who don't,
right?
the people who don't learn humility usually don't move on. They get stuck, and it's hard for them to evolve because you have to accept the fact that maybe you're not that good. Maybe you're not that smart. Maybe your ideas are not correct. Maybe there is more out there. And that's like funny because that was kind of the hang up for us in CrossFit was, we really don't think we know it all, and we're not sure. Like
No.
we're willing to question, what we do and how we do things and our beliefs because we want them to evolve. And when we started talking a lot about like hypertrophy training and bodybuilding within our jobs at CrossFit HQ, there was a lot of pushback from that and a lot of nosing up, so to speak, because they weren't curious about it. They did think that they kind of like, we know all we need to know about training. We don't really need to learn about that. And,
I do.
And that for us, honestly, was, that made our decisions kind of easy and clear. Like if we want to really pursue this, we probably are not going to be in CrossFit HQ. Maybe we'll be adjacent to CrossFit, like maybe we'll be next to them.
I also think with some like retrospective, like when you look at CrossFit as a business and not just as like, it's like we personally were ready to kind of move on and learn about more and expand our knowledge. And we were very interested in blending aesthetic and the CrossFit type of workout together because that's what we personally
and like you're talking
But-
about humility. When we started getting into that world of bodybuilding, we were at the bottom of the totem pole. We got laughed at in some of
I
those
got
bodybuildings.
laughed
We
at
told them-
national, and
we
I
told
don't
us we
care.
were we're CrossFitters. We want to do bodybuilding. Like, huh. And we had to earn our stripes. But one of the things that all these coaches and other athletes respected was that when it came time to actually prep, when it came time to train and time to be strict, like we did it better than anyone else. And because, like you're willing to do pull-ups until your hands bleed. So just kind of like putting those bumper lanes on the training and saying like, we're going to do things on purpose with purpose and just point you in a direction. We see this with ourselves and a lot of our athletes. They excel so quickly at this because it's just putting those bumper levels in, like just allowing for the recovery to happen, giving them the food they need to grow, being a little bit more strategic with training, getting a little bit better exercise selection, and how you're doing those movements is probably the most notably different thing to the way we did and taught CrossFit. Was it's not about your score on the whiteboard.
No.
Like that honestly doesn't matter. Nobody really cares how much you bench press. It's not a powerlifting competition. What matters is the adaptation, that you were able to take your muscles with high value, high utility repetitions, close proximity to failure consistently over long periods of time. Like not a couple weeks or a couple months, but over years. And you could progressively just improve those movements and add capacity methodically, strategically. That's really the most impressive thing about that sport is like you can really make big progress that you wear on your body if you're doing it right. And if you're not doing it right, you just don't get anywhere.
Yeah, what I wanted to say about CrossFit is when you look at it like as a business, is they've created this whole methodology around this type of training, right? And they're teaching it, and this is how they're doing everything. So I think in order for this insane machine to like add on this next thing, like I'm just saying, I wonder like how much it would take to like you
Well,
know.
honestly, I don't think it would
So
take that much because I think
so
the idea with
I just
CrossFit.
don't see that. I just don't think that this is where CrossFit want to go at
Yeah.
all. Like they have their thing. It's
But
freaking
that doesn't
awesome.
make sense to me, and I disagree with it because
Yeah.
there's CrossFit endurance, there's CrossFit
Yeah.
Olympic lifting,
You're
there's
right.
CrossFit powerlifting, there's CrossFit football at a point. There's all
Yeah.
these things that it's like, hey, all my endurance athletes, here's a version of CrossFit
Hmm.
for you. All my Olympic lifters, here's a version of CrossFit for you. Why couldn't you do that with bodybuilding? And what people don't realize
Yeah, you're
is that
right.
it's not like just doing CrossFit and being able to get on stage. The bodybuilding helps your CrossFit a
A
tremendous
hundred
amount
percent.
because for most people, once they're past that honeymoon period, the difference in continuing to improve isn't like learning how to cheat a little bit better, right? It's not getting a
No,
little bit
you
more
have
efficient on your
to.
kipping pull up or maybe getting a slightly better position in a
You have to
snatch.
build your foundation.
It's
Your
increasing the
muscular.
cross-sectional
Yes.
size and strength of
Yes.
muscle. CrossFit uses this model of 10 general physical skills, 5 that are neurological, or excuse me, 4 that are neurological, 4 that are biological, meaning a change in the tissue, and they are cardiorespiratory endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, speed are in the middle, and they kind
Yeah.
of represent
'Cause
both.
yeah.
And then there's coordination, accuracy, agility, balance as the neurological ones, right? They tap out those neurological adaptations pretty damn quickly. Like
Mm-hmm.
once you learn the skills, you've got them. It's like riding a bike. There's not much more improvement to be made there. The biggest area to improve is in the miles they have to actually improve
Yeah.
their contractile potential.
Yeah.
And the biological adaptations are like, now you got the software and you know how to communicate really well with your muscle. Now we just need to give you a bigger machine to use it with.
Yeah.
And then for the breakdown issues, I think like it's the cure for injuries. It's what allowed me
I
to heal my
think,
back, to heal your shoulder.
and that's what. So that's. I feel like that's where like my little flip towards bodybuilding happened was after I had my shoulder surgery. Me and you, we kind of went on this like whole path of like, okay, how can we put the muscle back on?
Yeah.
Because my shoulder atrophied so much.
It was like a noodle.
And that's when you got obsessed with Brad.
Dr. Brad.
Dr. Brad.
What a guy. What a name. Dr. Brad Schoenfeld.
Schoenfeld, that's it.
But like he
And then when, so for most people at home don't know this, but I got so sick during my pregnancy. My first trimester, I lost 10 pounds. I was like seeing my body like just falling apart.
it's not supposed to be dropping. It's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
that's
going
not-
up
that's the
because I'm
wrong direction.
pregnant.
You're trying to add a
Yes,
person in there.
like I like couldn't train the whole time. It was very hard. And then we spent 3 months at the NICU, and then it was like.
But describe yourself physically by the time that you had Zoe, were in the NICU. What did the low point look like?
Like
give me weight or how you felt or how you looked. Like what is a point where you're like, I've never seen myself this far from looking or feeling
oh my
fit?
God, well, especially being at the NICU with the lack of sleep, and I went up to like over 160.
Nice.
After, and I mean, just as reference, I'm at like 130. And that was after I gave birth. So I was like 160. And then like I would go for like 5 to 10 minute walk, and that was hard.
And you just felt like out of shape just walking.
And that was hard. And that's kind of the thing, is I would like kind of try to do CrossFit, and it was just so overwhelming.
That intensity.
Like it was so overwhelming.
I have to imagine your
didn't
cortisol
even
levels are
knew-
already so high.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't even knew where to start, even though I've taught CrossFit with you for like years and years
Yeah.
and years and years, and it was just not it.
Because
so
mentally you know how to go hard. You know you can do it, and so like, it's not maybe like especially for someone like you, it's not like an easy entry point to get back into things.
But also it was like, because I would make up myself some workout, like, deadlift and like kind of like woohoo, fast walk. And I was like, well, I just don't see how it's like necessarily like targeting my shoulder or my legs or like some body part that I wanted to have something that would bring my aesthetic back that would build my frame again. So because I felt very frail.
Yep.
And that was something I've never felt before in my life. I felt frail, and it's terrifying to feel frail.
It's funny because
so I wanted to build myself back up, put my shape back on.
And it's not just the weight, like it's a composition too.
Yes.
Right? Because like it wasn't, you may have been losing muscle, but you were still putting on lots of weight. And so if that was like where you started, now just fast forward as to where you finished on stage when you were doing nationals in 2021.
Yeah, I was very skinny.
Like, but you were muscular. You probably had more muscle mass than you ever had. But you were like 100 and.
I don't think I had more mass than when I did CrossFit, though.
Okay,
for sure.
Did you lose a lot of muscle though?
I think I lost a lot during my pregnancy, and then I was able to put some back on. Because I mean, it's 9 months of like not being able to lift that much. Like it's a lot.
I saw that. Okay, so like. You were like 115 pounds on stage. So you went from 160 to 115, like all within a year, and you looked amazing.
Yeah.
It's not easy to stay in stage condition, but even being plus 10 pounds, like you've completely reshaped your body.
I did, and now it's like I feel like I'm looking more and more the way I want to look for life.
Yep.
And funny enough, like I've been doing, so Zoe's going to turn 3 in July, and maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, I started to just do more of the training with the competitive girl at CrossFit West Chase. And I mean, I didn't know what I could do or not. Like, I haven't done any of that.
Yeah, you like do a pull-up and you're like, I hope this keeps my shoulder in its socket.
I don't even know if I can do a pull-up.
Fingers crossed it doesn't pop out.
And a couple months right now, and I'm not like following any like, progressive program to like get my muscle up or my snatch. I do it like once every 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm like cycling like 10 muscle up at a time, and I'm snatching 160.
That makes
like,
me so nervous.
No problem. I know. That's why I do it only once in a while.
Don't hurt yourself.
But
it's there.
It was very surprising to me.
But you're saying that's the neurological stuff, though. You never lose that.
Yes, but I'm saying it was very surprising, because that's one thing that we both is very important to us, is that we look at the science and then we try it. So I rebuild myself. I didn't do those movements, but I know how to do those movements.
Yep.
And I'm like here just cycling 5-10 muscle up at a time, and can snatch heavy and just. And I'm doing like a 7-minute mile run in the workout by having only done for a very long time, like over 2.5 years after Zoe, only did mostly bodybuilding and kind of zone 2 type of cardio.
Yeah, and we learned so much.
That was very surprising.
That was one of the best decisions we made to build our knowledge, was like, not just like reading it in a book, but living it. And being around high-level athletes who just understand, and you learn so much about the sport. One of the biggest things you learn is that, like, while the training is important, it's really about the other 23 hours of the day.
Yes,
that's going to dictate what your body's doing. The nutrition, the lifestyle, the internal chemistry, like that's paramount. That most people don't even pay attention to, because it's not just intensity is the cure-all.
But I do love, and I think that's my engineering brain. I love how purposeful bodybuilding is.
Systematic.
It's, if you don't feel it, it's not happening.
Yep.
So instead of being like, just trying to reach a number on the bar or something like that, it's very exciting to do things lighter, slower, and just so purposefully. And it's like for a fact that when you're done with your butt and hamstring day, that your butt and hamstring day has been worked.
But it's so fun
really
too,
nice.
because it's not just a science, like it's also an art. It's, you learn these principles, but then as you coach and learn about yourself and your athletes, you learn how the finesse of like how to push someone, what they need a little bit more or less of, whether it's a nutrition or a training, exercise selection, or just being able to kind of, even in a lot of cases, like when you're training someone, like just kind of riff and be like, no, we're going to keep going, and now we're going to drop it down, and now we're going to put some partials. Like it's just different ways to just achieve the same broad goal of like exhaust the muscle, take it with close proximity to failure, do it progressively over long periods of time, get those forced reps in, and then pair it with a really intentional lifestyle and nutrition system.
Yeah.
That is golden, and it works so well. Going back to the science, we link up with Dr. Brad, who wrote the book, The Science of Muscle Hypertrophy,
Yeah.
but his thing is like he scrutinizes academic papers on hypertrophy,
love it.
and he breaks it down, and he
He's
makes
so
it
good.
simple because he knows there's not one way to skin a cat. And that was the first thing that I kind of learned from Brad, is just understanding like, okay, hypertrophy. Hypertrophy describes one way that cells can adapt to stress.
Yeah.
The stress includes inflammation, hormonal stimulation, or an increased workload. When a cell increases in size beyond its normal size, it's gone through hypertrophy. So when you're increasing the cross-sectional size and strength of your muscles,
push on your fibers, push on everything.
that's a
and then it gets
hypertrophic
bigger.
effect. So when you think about just kind of that basic, your body's designed to do one thing, it's designed to survive. These specific types of stresses can actually influence muscle hypertrophy if you're doing a lot of the other stuff outside the gym, right? So if you think about like the inflammation, yeah, you gotta break muscle down. You have to create micro tearing. You need to allow time for the muscle fibers, like the outer membrane, the sarcolemma, and the internal components, the myosin and actin bonds. You gotta give them time to heal. And you need to do that with the type of training that accumulates the right type of damage, which in a lot of cases is like the slow and controlled eccentrics, right, where the muscle is lengthening. And then, things like increased workload. Like you need to challenge muscles to do a little bit more, and you need to load them heavy in a way that they're unaccustomed to.
I do think that like on the heavy thing, I think people confuse the hypertrophy and strength and what's the other one
Well, if you think about like muscle tension, for instance,
like speed, would that be it?
Power.
Like, power,
Yeah.
yes, that's it.
It's not
Strength,
powerlifting.
and power. I think people confuse them. Often they think that if they do one rep, like
you're going to get a hypertrophic effect.
Yeah, it's
well,
like,
no, because you think about the formula, like you're not going to get enough volume.
You'll get an hypertrophic effect of almost anything if you do.
If you do something you're not doing.
Yeah, exactly,
yes.
exactly. So let's make that clear. But when you look like a 1,000-foot view of hypertrophy, what we're looking for is volume and muscle tension.
Yep.
It's like volume and tension is king.
Yep.
So it's like you need to keep that in mind when you go into those heavy reps.
Yep.
Because if it's heavy and ugly and you're not getting the right muscle in, or the reps are too fast, you're not maximizing the tension. And that's why when you do hypertrophy, that like 8 to 12 rep is wonderful.
It works really well a lot of the time.
Or a smaller rep with a lot of tempo.
Yep.
Because you want to maximize the muscle tension to get the most out of it.
I think like what works really well for us and for a lot of our athletes, because we don't know specifically what our athletes are going to respond well to more than others. We don't know which athletes are going to respond better to 8 reps and which ones are going to respond better to 30 and which ones are going to respond better to 3. We don't really know that, but luckily enough, like Dr. Schoenfeld identifies these mechanisms.
Yes.
So you've got the muscle tension or heavy mechanical loading,
Yep.
right? Where it's just the bar ain't bending, you're just pretending. That's the top end loading
Muscle
stuff where
damage.
it's more weight than you've ever held before, more tension than you've ever had, typically for like lower reps and higher weight.
Yep.
And then there's the micro tearing thing, which is getting the volume, creating the damage, using the slow eccentrics. And then there's a third one, which I think has the best context
The metabolic
for
stress.
an injured athlete, right? So if you're an injured athlete,
Yes,
usually
yes.
the thing that the doctors are going to tell you to avoid is like, hey, nothing too heavy, right? Don't go heavy. And so that's what they told me after back surgery. It was like, hey, you can't lift heavy anymore. And why I reached out to Dr. Schoenfeld is because I'm like, hey, I'm not supposed to lift heavy. Is there a way to grow muscles without lifting heavy? And this was opened up this whole conversation. It's like, yes, if you do lightweight for high reps and you still take it with a close proximity to failure, and you can spice this up a zillion ways. You can spice this up by going slow, by adding pauses, but you need to have a high volume of contractions. And then the kicker, and what most CrossFitters will relate to, is not enough rest between sets to recover.
So you're constantly
you're
accumulating
a
the
bigger
going
and bigger
to
deficit.
failure.
Yes, exactly. And what that does is, it traps a lot of the byproducts of muscle contraction, hydrogen and lactate. It traps them in the muscle, which causes all this swelling,
Yeah.
which has a real anabolic effect.
I do think that that's the one, like metabolic stress is the one that is most common feeling wise for CrossFitter.
The burn, like it burns. They're going so hard it burns.
Yeah, it's like this workout that they're doing handstand push-up and they start to fail, and it's like the shoulder, like you can feel your shoulder are like about to explode out of its socket, and you don't even know what muscle to use anymore.
Yep.
And that's when it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper in the muscle.
So when I started Thunderbro, when I started kind of formulating this stuff first for myself, because of the time that I was in with the back injury, a lot of the stuff I initially started doing was like either light or lots of control, lots of tempo kind of works, taking what I was learning in the bodybuilding field on machines in that gym and translating it to the barbell and the dumbbell.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to blend that, and I think this is a great place for some people to start if they're interested in kind of experimenting with adding bodybuilding or hypertrophy with some CrossFit, is to put in a finisher after your CrossFit workout that correlates closely with the muscle groups you were working in the training. And the reason for that is you want to have that be the day that you hammer that muscle group, so the next day, hopefully, you can rest it.
Yes.
And you're not going to use it again. And you can allow for that tissue to heal and remodel and grow. So, like, we wrote a book. The first book's called the Book of 100 10-minute hypertrophy finishers. Me and my buddy Andrew with the chicken on his head.
110 finishers.
No, it's the 100 10-minute hypertrophy finishers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not 110, it's 100. And they each take 10 minutes. But we developed, these things where it's like, okay, you did Fran, okay, well, let's work on some auxiliary pulling. And we had, different categorized by like pulling, pushing, really by muscle function. And I think that's an easy place to start because you can still do CrossFit every day. You don't have to leave the affiliate. But you can just add that stuff in. So we wrote that book, and then years later, as we learned and came up with a bunch of new complexes, we wrote the Hypertrophy Finishers Bible, which is now, instead of being categorized by function, it's categorized by individual muscle group: legs, chest, back, shoulders, arms.
Yeah.
And then the second.
So something I just want to say, something I'm starting doing next week, July 3rd, is I'm going to do every month a free, like we're going to choose something we want to bias towards.
So like a body part?
Yeah, so we're going to choose a body part.
Is the first one butts?
Yes. So yes. The first one is butts. So if you want to follow our butts.
You got to get a good name for that. It's Bootylicious July.
Yes, it will be Bootylicious August once it's built. So
July.
Yeah, we're gonna start in July. We're gonna do 2 days of butt focused hypertrophy workout.
Okay.
And if you're at home and you want to start doing some,
is it just 2 days a week?
2 days a week.
Is there a third training day or?
No, the rest people follow their own program at home.
Would that be the kind of thing where it's like, okay, if I'm like a CrossFit guy or a girl, although I imagine a lot of girls would be interested in this because, like I've seen with guys, all the guys want their upper body and their arms bigger, and most of the ladies we talk to want better, slimmer waists and more defined glutes and legs and stuff. So is that the kind of thing where they would do that on, say, like Monday and Thursday, and they could just go do CrossFit on the other days? Okay.
Yes, I want them to just be able to do that as their strength, so they can like put their feet in. Put their feet into the bodybuilding.
It's so fun for people to just like taste the methods. Like when we do the seminars.
So that's why I'm doing it for free. I'm going to post it on my Instagram. We're going to post it on Furrows Fitness. We're going to post it on our newsletters. If you follow a newsletter, you're going to get both workouts every week. You can register on our app for free, so you'll have it on the app.
Do you have like a website they should go to?
Yeah, furrowsfitness.com, and I need to now put it on the website before we air that video.
So I was saying, like, that's so fun to me, and I love going and teaching classes with you.
But we'll do that every
month. I love
month.
doing these little training demos because I could talk until I'm blue in the face about this stuff. I love it. I'm super passionate about it. You are too.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like talking, right? When you're able
when
to
people
like
do it, it's
when you're able
it's
to get the
amazing.
dumbbells in their hand. This is why I try to force people to do stuff at our booth when they come to like our expos and stuff. When you get the dumbbell in their hand and they're shocked at how hard it can be the way they're doing it, like they've never felt this stuff before, they never thought of the movement that way, or they never, you know, they never thought something so easy and accessible could be so challenging, not just about like moving
All right,
heavy weight.
close this podcast off.
We have a lot to go. We have at least 90 more minutes.
No,
after
I
this
can't do
podcast.
it. We put Zoe to bed. We're like way past my bedtime.
We're almost through. So
we can keep talking.
we got
tomorrow.
We got two more methods to talk about.
No. Let's save it for the next one.
We're gonna keep going. Cammie's gonna protest.
No,
She'll leave.
no.
5 minutes from now, she's gonna come
No.
back and rejoin the podcast,
No.
and then tell me that I talk too much.
We're done.
To be continued.
We're done. To be continued. We'll talk more. Ask us your question. What you guys want to know? What did you like? And yeah.
And that's an incomplete podcast. Coming
No,
live.
it was complete.
It's complete.
Okay?
It's complete.
It's complete for today. I am exhausted.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning